I'm Leonard Elijah.
And I'm Amir Araghi.
And we are
the Conscious Cup Podcast.
Just as many of us drink our coffee to get through our day, the Conscious Cup Podcast is about filling your soul with a guiding light of energy to navigate you through the week. And on today's show, we'll be talking about overcoming your past and embracing your potential with special guest, Dr. Danielle Divine. Yes. We'll go through the grind where we talk about the upcoming events in the spiritual community. We have a very special one, actually a couple that we're going to go over. Then we'll go into filling your cup, where we get to the main subject of the week, overcoming your past and embracing your potential with our special guest. Then to what's brewing as we take a peek into global consciousness and the news. Mm-hmm. A funny word for it. But then we'll go to, finally, we'll go to spilling the beans, where we discuss our weekly spiritual task that's going to be given by our special guest. And we'll talk about the previous one we had and the new one that that Dr. Danielle Divine is going to be assigning to us, and our personal reflection on them. So with that, we ask you, what are you filling your spiritual cup with? All right. Well, we're very, very pleased to have you here with us. This is Dr. Danielle Divine.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Round of applause.
Officially our first guest.
Our first guest,
ever.
guys.
I'm so honored.
Yeah.
You know, she's divine, and she's here.
Yes.
And we actually Amir and I both were just blessed with what would we call it? A healing session? What's the terminology for this?
That particular session I call divine alignment.
A divine alignment session. And
definitely was a divine alignment.
We are on cloud 7,000. And
a little high.
I'm actually asleep right now. This is
is this reality or is it just a fantasy? I can't tell. We are it was incredible. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was amazing. We had a little cacao to start, which was delicious. A little bit of spice. In our life, and it was really great. And and then we went into it, and it was really incredible. Now, do you want to tell us a little bit about that, or is that something
process?
Can you share that, or is that something that
I can share
keep
it
close to the chest? Okay.
No, I think it was great that we were able to do that before the session, because like Amir and I were discussing, it's really hard to put into words. So I will do my best, and then you guys can share a little bit about what you experienced as well. So the divine alignment sessions are a mix of like energy work and chiropractic. And what I compare them to is, because I also do body ceremonies. Body ceremonies are like my 90-minute, really, really big, intense session. So what you guys just got, it's like triple that.
Wow.
And
Really?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And so the body ceremonies, I'm like, that's like the teeth cleaning. And the divine alignments are like the flossing in between. Okay. So I consider those, they're great. People can start with those as well. It's more of like slowly taking the layers off the onion so that we can start getting to some of these root issues that are embedded within our tissues, our cells, our nervous system, so that we can feel more connected and show up better. Yeah. And with that process, as you guys experienced, we do breath work, we do visualization, we go into certain emotions, we might set certain intentions, including, the chiropractic work within there. Now, not everybody I work on gets the chiropractic adjustments. Some people actually don't want them. So we just purely do the energy work, and they still have beautiful results. It's also, for them, that's where they're going to receive more anyways, is the softer things. And so I trust the body and I trust their system. That's all they need. So honestly, each person can look very different. And it looks very different every time. So if we were to work on you guys again, you could have a completely different session and be like, wait, it's so different from the last one.
Wow.
Well, thank you. And that was really great.
Yeah, it was an awesome, like, you do definitely feel the multi-dimensional aspect of it. I feel like you do feel the physical component, because there is the, physical touch and chiropractic portion of it. You definitely get the breath. And I do feel like your emotional body obviously is responding to all of it as well. And so, when you combine that with energy and consciousness, it becomes a very multi-dimensional experience. Mm-hmm. So it was really very cool. Very, very cool.
I breathed in places I didn't know I could breathe.
Yeah.
My breaths were becoming so deep, so open. and she would touch me and be like, your breath needs to be here. Bring your breath here. And then she'd bring another part of me and said, it needs to go from there to here. Bring the breath from here to there. It was like, okay. And then when she'd walk away, we did it at the same time. So both of us did this. We were on 2 tables next to each other, and she did this at the same time. And it was like when she'd go over to you to, do the thing with you, I'm now integrating what she had worked on with me.
Right.
And it's expanding and expanding. And I see my breath and my chest and everything is getting deeper and bigger. And then she would come back and I don't want to speak on your behalf. I mean, this is how it felt on my side.
I mean, is that like, would you do something like this for like couples? Is that like a cool thing to do?
I do this for couples.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be really like
for
powerful.
Like Amir and I?
Yeah. That's why I did it for you guys.
The cameras are on. No,
I almost made you guys hold hands and I was like, we're not there yet. Intimacy, where that will be step 2.
Yeah.
But no, I do this for couples.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. The last couple that I did this for, they were actually wanting to do it as a family. Like they wanted to bring their family in to do like generational stuff because they could feel things clearing between each other as I was working on them. And I mean, you guys had your eyes closed, so you can't see the full time, but there was at one point where you were working on a similar spot. So I just work on the both of you at the same time. So meaning instead of me just being focused on you or focused on Leonard, I have my hands on both things and I'm working on both the energy at the same time. It's also how we opened it. Like when I had you guys drop through the meditation, I am dropping you through at the same time.
Wow.
So, working on it with couples is really powerful. And I mean, even 2 people who, are, maybe they don't know each other that well, but they're both in the work. The field is just, it allows it to expand and we're all connected, right? So something he's clearing can also clear in you, can also clear in me as I'm working on you guys.
It's a group.
So it's like a group effort.
That's really beautiful.
Now, for those who don't know Dr. Danielle Divine, which I don't know where you've been, but if you don't know her, we're going to take a step back and talk about her background, talk about where she's from, where she studied, who she studied with. She has a very, very interesting upbringing. She's traveled a number of places. Now, if I'm correct, you grew up in Santa Barbara. Is that right?
Yeah, like half my life.
Okay.
We moved a lot.
Right. And then you went to Seattle as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you studied at a very interesting place because you had to learn the doctor of chiropractic work, right? And that's more of
it's a doctorate.
A doctorate school, so you have to do the typical stuff. And then you went to a different school, right? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you could kind of let us know about your background, your education, and where you got your chops to do this stuff. Because I've been to other chiropractors, and it's not anything like this. I mean, there's a percentage of it that's similar, but it's like night and day. In my opinion.
Yeah. Do you want me to begin from the beginning?
Whatever you feel.
Okay.
What's your first memory? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, kind of. Actually, kind of. That's funny that you say that. So, my background is that when my mom was pregnant with me, she was at a spiritual school called Ramtha School of Enlightenment. It's also where, if anybody knows Dr. Joe Dispenza, it's where he went to school. And my mom, him, and my uncle were all very good friends. It's also where she met my godmother. Wow. So while my mom was pregnant with me.
Shout out Dr. Joe. We'd love to have you on the show.
Yeah.
Isn't he subscribed?
I know somebody that knows her. Maybe we can get,
But yeah, so, like my mom was pregnant with me while she was going to that school. They continued to go to that school. And when I was age appropriate, they started taking me to the school. And in this school, it is a very metaphysical school. You're learning how to mold energy, how to transform things. I mean, they do crazy stuff. I think, when I was 8, and they had us, you draw something on a card and you have to put it up on a fence, and they blindfold you and they put everybody in the field and all your cards are up on the fence. You have no idea where your card is. And then you focus, you use your breath, you have blindfolds on, and you walk across the field to find your card.
Wow.
And I found mine. And they had me end up going up on stage, and I was like 8, and I was like, okay, cool. Cause you don't know when you're that age.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, this is a big deal. Like, da, da, da. So anyways, that was like, my mom would do oracle.
The rest is history.
And the rest is it. That's it. I would do oracle cards. My mom trained me on colors. So like she would have different colored paper in front of me, have me close my eyes and go through and feel, and like first intuition, first hit. We would sit back to back and she would draw something on a card, and then she would say, okay, focus on what I drew. Wow. And then I would draw it on the other side, So we did that. I mean, as long as I can remember till we moved to Seattle. And then I was like turning 14 and I was starting to get in junior high and I was too cool to be doing woo-woo things and was like, oh yeah, there's a real world out here. And I have been adjusted since I was like 2 years old. I've been in chiropractic care my whole life. You know, I was a gymnast. It was part of my life constantly. And I just never was interested in doing it though. Never thought I would do it. And I worked for a chiropractor actually all the way through college, but I was a dance major and I wanted to move to New York and work in marketing and dance and be in a company. And that's all I wanted to do. And then I got in a car accident. And I fractured my acetabulum and they were like, which is in your hip. Sorry.
Thank you. I was going to ask.
And
Acetabulum. Oh, yes. I have 2 of those.
Yes.
you do?
Acetab. When I go to Burning Man, a lot of people have acetabs too. Acetabulums.
Yeah. For sure. Same thing.
I have a left and a right one. Yeah.
I missed that part of the song. The hip bone's connected to acetabulum.
You got it. I ended
How
up.
old were you when that accident happened?
21? No. Yeah, 21.
Can I ask a question? When you were in that, did it feel from the core of where you were like this was really what you wanted to do, or
With dance?
yeah,
Oh yeah.
it did.
When that happened, that accident happened, I was like, well, life is over. Like, cause they told me I couldn't dance anymore. They were like, no, you can't dance right now. And I was like, what do you mean? And then I was like, I don't want to do a marketing major only. I didn't want to sit at a desk and just only have that.
Yeah.
So I eventually, you know, I was sitting there and I was like, what am I going to do? You know, and at the time I was working for my chiropractor and then my mom and everybody was just kind of like, well, what if you went to chiropractic school? You love working at the chiropractor. You were an athlete your whole life. Like you're good. You know the body. Like you don't want to sit behind a desk, you know? And I was like, I don't want to go to like 4 more years of school.
Right.
You know? And so then Joe called me and he was like, you know, you should go check out Life West. It's a really amazing school. And I was like, you know, what do I have to lose? I guess I'll go look. And I went for a weekend to tour and I left and I was in tears and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Wow.
I just had this feeling. And so, like literally that summer started, I didn't even take the summer off and it was quite the journey for me. Wow. And so I went to school thinking, oh, I'm going to be a sports chiropractor and like do all this stuff. And it completely changed and transformed.
Wow.
So
it's really, you know, it's almost one of those things that when you look at it on the biggest picture possible, like the biggest perspective possible, you see these things kind of occur. And at the moment it's devastating, right? Like you're going through that and it's devastating.
It's like the car accident, right?
Like,
Obviously.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's like, it brings you to purpose. And it's just such a beautiful reminder to not react, but to pull back and have some level of trust of like, hey, I might not be understanding what's going on right now, but this might be a signal of me, you know, me to me, nudging me to where like that true essence of it is going.
Yeah.
So it's such a beautiful story, like in and of itself, that it was there, but now you're here and it's like, it's your purpose, I feel like, right?
Yeah. And honestly, like since then has been such a ride as far as like my own personal life and just my journey through chiropractic and what it looks like for me. But I will say, it's 100% my mission. Like there's not a doubt within my being. And it really is, it's not just like my work. It's not just my, you know, career. It's my life, you know, and it's what I'm devoted to 100%. And it's interesting because there was a part of me at one point that kind of resisted that. That was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. And like, I don't want to just do it. And then as soon as I turned it over to that, it's like life just got that much better. And I will be very honest, there was not much of a work-life balance at first when I was doing that. And then I have now recently found like a easier flow into that so that it doesn't suck up my entire life and I can still have like a personal life, but
have fun.
Yeah, have fun. That was a big thing. But yeah, it's really beautiful. And I mean, I wouldn't do anything else. Like, you know, people like want to retire and I'm like, I've never thought about retiring.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, no, this is what I'll do until I die.
When you're serving, when you're doing that kind of service and you're seeing that kind of impact in people's lives. And I feel like in a way it's not so much you, it's through you.
Exactly.
And when that's the case, then it's like, why stop that flow?
Exactly.
I need to get out of the way as much as possible and serve. If I've been given this gift, right? It's all the creator anyway.
Right.
If I've been given this gift and, tell me what you think, it's like, I'm going to get out of the way and just do this service.
Yeah.
That's why it's, significantly past midnight and we're here doing this because you're like, no, we need to do this right. I need to serve,
Right.
and, it's a big reason why we're here.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way?
I mean, yeah, it's everything to me, and also, like you said, there's this way too where people will be like, oh my God, like you're such an amazing healer. And I'm like, I take no blame. I take no credit. Like I am the vessel and I channel it through.
Beautiful.
And even, before I work on anybody, and especially in the morning, but always right before sessions as well, because we're human and we have stuff happen and you have to let it go. Like I always, I'm just like, okay, clear my vessel, allow me to be the clearest I can be. And I mean, you guys saw my eyeballs after. It's like I'm on a different planet when I'm working. It's completely, it's not mental. Like, yes, I have the training and I have the know-how and I know the red flags of like when I can and cannot do something on somebody. That's what my, education is for.
Yeah.
And once I'm in the flow, like I'm in the flow state.
Yeah.
And so, today it's like I had clients all day and there's a way where it can be very interesting to have a conversation with me on a day like today while I'm in that space, because it's like I'm kind of out here.
Right.
And then it's like I don't come back in until like I'm done with the day.
Right.
But it's very channeled. It's just you're channeling source through you, and that's the thing is it's just my source connecting to your source.
Right.
Right. I don't necessarily serve the human. I serve the energy within you that allows you to be the most connected to that as you can
beautiful.
be.
That's really beautifully said.
I don't necessarily serve the human. I serve the energy within you that allows you to connect to source for you to be that as much as you can be. It's the expression of source, right? As long as we're all that expression as fully connected as we can be, there's not as much issues.
No, there's none really.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, there's really none. And it's, what you were saying about the whole work thing. I feel like when you are in the flow, in a very paradoxical way, the self becomes completely unimportant.
Exactly.
And simultaneously becomes the most important thing too, because you're just that channel, but it's not an ego thing anymore. It's just like, this is what it's supposed to be. So you don't get tired.
Ego is nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just,
it melts away.
Yeah, totally.
There's days I show up and I'm like, in a t-shirt, and it's like people would look at me and be like, well, who's gonna be working on me? And it's
that's
like
a doctor. She has a lot of tattoos. I don't know. Is it really a doctor?
Wu-Tang shirt.
Yeah, this is not a real doctor though.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no.
I'm the same way too. When I teach class, I'm like in t-shirts.
Right.
And I'm like, this whole idea of having to dress a certain way or look a certain thing so it fits a box for the narrative.
I got a lot of shit.
Part of the
that.
whole entire process of self-realization is dropping self,
100%.
dropping any type of identity you have with the personhood. So how silly that we're going to judge someone's personhood when their whole point is to drop it.
Yeah.
It's really something else, but this is 3D. Hello guys.
I do also just want to recognize and not only for your parents, but just to open a paradigm that raising a child can be very different than what's taught to you. And I think that what they've done from the minimal that you've just mentioned and just going through that, it's a really powerful thing, right? It doesn't need to look a certain way. I can raise a child in a way that's really powerful and that helps them, go to a different level. It's like, can you sit there and tell your kid you can go figure this out with your eyes closed without anything and have them exercise that part of the consciousness that is ripped away actually in school.
Yeah.
But, just to everybody who's a parent out there, it doesn't matter what age, your kids are, it's irrelevant, but holding that space and that possibility, it changes the world. It's a completely amazing thing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, that's part of as I reflect back, I'm like, how many people grow up like that? I mean, not a lot,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like to deny that and to know like I was very born into that space for a reason, you know, and it wasn't just my mom, like my uncles in it, like my godmother, it's very part of my like core foundation.
Right.
So to deny that, which I tried to for a while and it just didn't work, you know, it's like, why would I deny that gift?
Right.
So yeah, talking about it being like purpose and mission, I'm like, it's kind of laid there in the blueprint.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really
It's
beautiful.
great. And it's obvious. It's obvious in the work you do and the passion you have for it. I mean, I've spent a few days with you, and to see how driven you are by this, and to see how it's really at the root of your being, it's really admirable, you know, because for you, service is a way of life, and it's not an afterthought. It's the primary,
Yeah.
you know, and we all can take a page out of that book. You know, humanity would look much different if we all could serve in any way we can. You know, not all of us have developed the gifts and talents that you have, but we have something.
Yeah.
You know, everybody
for sure.
has something that they can do for service, you know,
Yeah.
in their own way. Before we get into the main topic, I want to ask a couple of questions, just so we can get to understand how you operate. What is a morning like for you? A typical morning? Like, what's your morning routine? What kind of things do you practice? Do you employ? Like, how does it look?
So morning routine is extremely important for me. And if you watch any of my things on Instagram, when I talk about this, I'm always like, don't look at your phone first thing in the morning. So that's, I mean, I have an alarm because I like to sleep. So that's just that. And,
Who doesn't like to sleep?
and, yeah, I mean, true. I wake up, I automatically start programming my mind first thing. So versus like looking at if I have any messages or anything, I don't look at my messages. I don't look at anything. I go straight into my mind and I start to notice, okay, what's coming up and what do I want to reprogram? So let's say if I had a dream the night before and I'm very, very, very vivid dreamer. I have been since I was a kid. And, I can have dreams and I'll wake up with extreme anxiety. So I'm like, okay, so what do we need to do right now to change that? One is just acknowledging that the dream was a dream, asking why it came up, right? And then being like, okay, who do I want to be today? How do I want to transmute this? How do I want to show up today differently?
Wow.
If I have things that are still nagging from the day before, it's like, okay, can I be open to receive? One of my favorite things is like, God, show me a creative solution for this. Because I feel like I can be very type A. I can get very in my head, although it might not seem it when I'm holding space. Because a lot of people are like, you're so grounded. And I'm like, well, I'm holding space, you know, I'm like, but I'm human too. And so, the morning is like, as soon as I wake up, I start visualizing how I want to feel, like seeing how I want my day to go, really tapping into that feeling. I usually listen to affirmations. I brush my teeth like try to do it with my left hand because you're retraining the brain, you're rewiring the brain. I make sure that when I'm doing that, I look in the mirror, make eye contact with myself, and I say at least 3 positive things to myself. In my home, I have a baby picture of myself next to my mirror, and I talk to her too.
Wow. So cool.
And then,
Yeah. She's cool, huh?
I love it. That's so you.
yeah, that's my favorite one.
Yeah.
That one's a big one.
Yeah.
I did a body ceremony for a client at their house, and he had a bunch of stuff coming up, and I was like, okay, hey, where's your baby pictures? And we went, and it was great. When I go to clients' houses, it's really personal because I'm watching and seeing how they do everything, how they have everything lined up. It's hard for me to not just look and observe and take it in and be like, okay, what's affecting what? But he like took it out and we looked at it together. We had like an emotional moment of him like looking at this and talking to him. Then he like put it up on his mirror. It was fantastic.
Oh, nice.
But I do that, and then I always do some sort of breath work in the morning to clear myself as like the vessel. So we all get funky and stuck and
It's stunky.
stunky.
It's stuck and stinky together.
Yeah. Together.
If it gets stuck, it gets stinky, so it works.
I don't ever stink.
Stunky. Don't get stunky.
Don't do
You heard
it.
it here first.
You don't do it. But I do breath work and then some sort of meditation or whatever. Music is also a very important part of my morning. So I usually will turn something on, especially if I'm in a low place, that's going to shift my energy.
Do you, that is that's an impressive routine.
It takes a little bit.
Yeah.
So worth it. I'm sure you're
so worth
floating
it.
the whole day. You really set the foundation for what's coming. My morning routine is very similar to yours, and not everything you do, I do, but I do a bunch of stuff too, because it's like, I really want to set the tone for the day. It's the most important thing.
Yes.
Like rushing for me in the morning is like an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
It really is like, I mean, it's a good exercise to like be grounded and find my center, but like, I really like to do things in a way where I can meditate, do the breath work, do my affirmations, do my prayer. I have a whole situation, you know, because it's like, I really want to bring my best foot forward. So it's really great to hear your morning routine, and that picture thing with is awesome. And looking yourself in the eye in the mirror is another great one, and saying 3 things that are nice. I can employ that. That'd be a good practice for us to do. And then, that's nice. And it's going to your left hand on the toothbrush thing.
Yeah, that one I've heard. That one's very cool, because it also brings you to a level of awareness, because you got to be in the moment, right? You can't like just fade away. You're in that. Do you, just speaking of dreams, are you like a dream writer? Do you write your dreams?
So I used to, I have 2 journals where I wrote them almost every day for 2 years. And recently I have changed that, where now my journaling in the morning, this is actually another part of my routine. It's like not every morning, but I do it. Like I did it this morning. I wake up and I write my day as I want it to go, as if it's already gone that way. Ooh. So I literally am writing the story of my life like I'm writing a book. And it's like, awesome. I'm telling the story like, this is what's happened. And I can tell you, when I do that, things show up.
You've been hiding that secret. I can't believe this is the first time we're hearing of that. That's a good one.
That's really cool.
Can't let you know all the things right away.
Obviously.
But yeah, that's another one that's really important to me.
1 o'clock in the afternoon now? In your morning, have we got to 1 o'clock in the afternoon when you're doing that?
Well, so you know what's funny?
What time is the journaling start?
I'm like, I use like, I would say about 10 minutes to do that, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. I usually just try to get 1 page really solid.
Okay.
So I'll wake up. If I'm having a hard time visualizing, if I'm really stuck, then I just start writing right away. And I'm like, no, this is what we're programming. And then I'll go to the restroom, and then I come and I sit down and I do my breath work and stuff. Now, what I will say too is like, if I haven't had a lot of sleep and I'm like, I don't know, it's hard because I don't like cutting it down. Like also just technically speaking, when you wake up in the morning, right, you're going from those alpha and theta states, right? And so we're going into beta. Beta is like where we're in most of the day, is like the cognitive functioning, like trying to figure all things out. So that's the best time to program your brain, is right before bed and right when you're waking up in the morning. So it's not even like, oh, your mornings are just important. It's like, no. They're actually, it's like proven that that's when you want to program it. And you're activating the RAS, you're showing the amygdala and everything where you want to focus your day. Right. You're really actually wiring your brain. It's not just some like hocus pocus thing. So for me, even if I can't do all of it, it's like, I will do one thing no matter what. I always usually do breath though, because if I'm serving that day, I have to know that I'm clear and I'm on and nothing else matters.
Wow. That's really beautiful.
Thank you for that.
Just commenting on the dreams. It's one of the wildest things for me, because you're like intensely in this vibration, right? When you're dreaming like that, when it's a really significant dream and you wake up in a certain energy and you're like there. And if you don't give it presence, within 5 minutes, the ego is in and you've forgotten the dream. And that is such a powerful thing for us to remember, how powerful the ego can be, right? Like that anchor is so big that you have just spent this intense amount of energy in a place that is timeless, right? In your consciousness. Yeah. And you come out and you can even physically impacting you, but 5 minutes in and the ego is like taken over and you're right back. Like you've literally had this vivid dream and 5 minutes later, you're like, wait, what was that? You come out of it and it's wild, but it's a reminder of how powerful that anchor can be, for sure.
Totally.
So that's really cool.
Totally.
So what we usually do earlier, but we're going to do it a little bit later, is we're going to do the grind. And this is where we talk about the upcoming events. And now that you know how amazing she is, she's going to tell you about some of the events she's doing on the grind. Tell us what you got going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you have planned?
So the first event is on 11/11. And this one is for like all things integration. So look, people love doing the work. They love getting on the table. They love coming to the breath work and energetics ones. And they're great. The experiences are great, right? Because it takes you like really out into that space. And for me, I think that integration is so important and it's very skipped over. And as we're talking about routines, it's like people will go have these big experiences and then they don't integrate anything. And then they're like, oh man, my life went back to how it was 2 weeks later. And I'm like, yeah, because you didn't change anything when you went back. You have to, this is years of programming. You have to rewrite the program. You have to show up every day and exercise that new muscle. And so the one on 11/11 is all around, like people freak out around the holidays, right? Everybody gets super stressed out. You know, it also can be a traumatic time for people. People have lost loved ones during the holidays, or they don't have a lot of family, or when they go to see their family, you know, they don't enjoy it. It's both sides of the coin. And so this whole workshop is around how to regulate yourself during this time, how to keep yourself healthy in a very holistic way. And we're going to be doing different somatic practices and all sorts of things that people can begin to integrate and create their own sort of routine, because each person's different. And I think people watch a bunch of stuff on Instagram, social media, and they're like, oh, should I do this thing? Is this thing best? And blah, blah, blah. And people ask me that all the time. And I'm like, you need to learn your nervous system. So part of the workshop is also educating people about what is the nervous system? What does this look like? What is your main, like, do you like to freeze? Do you go into flight? Like, you know, what is it that you do? What is your baseline and how do you want to begin to shift that? So that's what we'll be doing on 11/11. And then for the big experience one
How much is the 11/11 workshop?
How much is it?
Yeah.
It's $40 for an hour and a half. It's a deal. Still.
Amazing. Yeah.
And then,
is that at Astrogong Yoga?
Yeah, that's at Astrogong Yoga. And then, the other one is on December 9th. And that one is the breathwork experience. So this is my most popular workshop. And it's a 2-hour workshop. We breathe like intensely for at least an hour. You basically get in 15 minutes and then people just already are having emotions and reactions come up. It's always a theme. So this one will be endings and beginnings. It's end of the year. We're going to shed a bunch of stuff and then we're going to program a bunch of new things. And so we begin with cacao ceremony. Then we do some like somatic practices to bring the energy up. And then everybody lays down and the playlist is completely set every time, new one, to the energy of the field. So basically all before the experience happens, I channel into what is the group. And literally I change the playlist all the way up until like probably the hour before, because people are coming in, coming out, dropping in, dropping out, things are shifting. And then at the end of it, we do a little bit of integration and, those are definitely my most popular. That's one everybody wants to do. They have a big experience. They love it. They're fun. They're super fun. I love doing them. I get super lit up by doing those. They're very fun.
Now, what's the date again?
That one's on December 9th.
Is that at
Saturday.
Astrogong as well?
That's at Astrogong
Yoga
Yoga as well.
Astrogong Yoga on La Brea, December 9th.
Yeah.
And that's in the evening, I assume?
Yes, 5 to 7. Those are 2 hours, $50.
$50, nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Wonderful.
so great.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
so
And we're going to put links. We're going to put links down below for signups for these events. We're going to put links to her social media, all the good stuff, so that you guys can stay in contact and learn more about her and her programs and everything she's doing, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I do want to add it's a synchronicity.
Go ahead.
The tab that I'm doing, which is like a singing of poems with music, that's literally this weekend. The theme of that is rebirth. So when you said, you know, new beginnings and new endings kind of a scenario, I was like, oh, what a synchronicity. Like it is. Boom. That's so cool. That's really, really awesome. I love that. I love that there's a vibration to it.
Yeah. It's so much fun.
Oh,
it's so much fun.
Yeah. And I've done some breath work with her and it's awesome. Really awesome. And if you watched the previous episode on forgiveness, she's the one who helped co-author a lot of the practices for the forgiveness practices. All right. Well, let's head into our main topic, filling your cup. And this topic was chosen by Dr. Danielle. She wanted to bring to the table a very fun topic. What is it?
Overcoming your past and embracing your full potential.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, we're here. Tell us about it.
Oh, man. Well, let's just start with, everybody has a past, and people get very attached to that past, to their past story, to things that happened in the past. And, going along with what we've already been talking about, it's finding the time, space, and embodiment to choose something new. So, it's like I've had a lot of trauma in my life. I've had a lot of things that I could be in a very different place right now than I am. And I just decided that's not what I wanted, and it's the choosing that, like, I want to overcome my past. I want to write a new story. I want to be a new person, and then dedicating yourself and devoting yourself to that, which means you have to wake up and choose, like, I'm going to embrace this potential that's inside me. And the thing that I recognize with most people when I'm working with them is that there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of, this already all happened to me, so how can I get to this? And, I think that's part of the reason why I've gone through a lot of what I've gone through, and why I do the work that I do, is because I sit with people who are on the table and they're like, but this happened to me and this. And I'm like, do you want to, okay, like, I'll tell you things that happened to me. And I'm like, I'm sitting right here holding you through this, and they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, like, I've had shit happen too. Like, I'm not perfect, like I've, had plenty of these things. And so I think it's about those of us who really are like, when you hit rock bottom and you're like, I just don't want this anymore, but I need to choose something different. It's about, can you embrace that potential that's within inside you, which is like, again, what we work with when I work with you on the table. It's just life energy potential, right? Stored energy is potential energy. So it's taking that and transmuting it into something new, completely like revamping yourself, if you will. And when people see that somebody else has done that, and they have a past that's maybe, dark or haunted or, traumatic or whatever you want to call it, it allows them to remember that that's also within them. And all they need to do is continue to remember that energy and continue to tap into it, and then let all the old stuff begin to shed away. And it's like a snake shedding its skin and being able to be in that full expression. And again, when people are in that full expression, that's where they come through and they serve, whether it's hands-on service or something else, that full expression, even you being in that embodied expression gives somebody else permission to also show up that way, period.
Right.
I've had so many people, I also dance, and so many people will tell me that watching me dance, because I'm very in my full expression when I'm dancing, is like medicine to them, but it's not anything I'm doing or saying or touching or whatever. And I think that's so true. We see so many people where we see them in their full expression like that, and it's like, like, I can do that too. I can have that. Right. So
you almost bring them to possibility.
Right.
So on that level, like, I hear two things, and I want to get your thoughts on it. One is that the identification immediately leads to justification, right? Like, here's my story, and because A happened, I have to stay in B. There's just no other way, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, this happened and this has got to be there.
Yeah. It's hard because you want to, I have a hard time I want to acknowledge clients with where they're at. And, there's so much diagnosis nowadays, and people really like labels.
Yes.
I don't like them at all. I never have.
Yeah.
And, I don't deny that there's effects of things that happen to us, correct? And I also say that those effects can change.
Yes.
If you tell yourself that it can't, then you are now living with that label for the rest of your life. And I think it's the same with, and dare I say this, but it's the same with disease or anything else. Once you've attached yourself to that, that's it. You've attached yourself to that, and the energy will bind, and then it will manifest. It feels like it's one of those where, do you want to live in the creator sense of the self? Do you want to live in the cause sense of the self? There's a state beyond cause and effect too that will, but in this level, it's, do you just want to be the effect? Like, everything has happened to me and I just have become that. A follow-up question on that, just real quick, because I think it is, and I'm just very curious to get your thoughts as well on this, is I just feel like people are also very addicted to that pattern,
Like they're just addicted to, this has to be this way.
Yeah.
Not only is it I'm not even addressing the possibility of something else, but they literally become addicted to that. Like it becomes part of their nature.
It's the emotion.
Yes.
They're addicted to the feeling they get with the emotion.
Yes.
So the thought patterns and everything are brought up to fulfill the outcome, which is the emotion.
Right.
Correct.
And that's where the trick is that you have to disassociate in that moment and be aware that, hey, I'm going to have this, I want this emotion. I'm craving, I'm addicted to this emotion. And if I stop it now, I won't get that emotion.
Right.
Right. It's like the high you get. If I smoke this, I'll get that high.
Right.
The high is the emotion. I mean, you tell me.
Yeah. I mean, that's correct. And what's hard about that though, is that if you tell somebody who's suffering that they're addicted to emotion, guess what they're going to say? No, I'm not. Why would I want this?
Why would I want this? Yeah.
And I have to gently explain to them that it's because it's programmed and it's because this is what's comfortable, even though it's discomfort. But it's what they know. It's what's familiar. Yeah. And so, you see this even with abusive relationships. When people go back, it's an addiction. It's a chemical addiction. Yeah. And so people continue to go back and they're like, why am I going back? Like, blah, blah, blah. And I have people come in and they're like, oh my gosh, like I feel so stupid and da, da, da. And I'm like, look, this is an addiction. Yeah. Like you have to get sober from this. Right. And, it's very true that people get addicted to those patterns. And also, look, we live in a society where we're not taught to take responsibility. Yeah. You go into a doctor, they don't even touch you. They just give you just list symptoms. And then they're like, here's a pill. Yeah. And you don't think twice about, hey, should I ask about this? Should I do about this? We are not taught to take responsibility for our own well-being. It's something that I preach in my practice is like with my clients, I'm like, do not become reliant on me. Yes, I facilitate your healing. Right. I am not doing the healing. Your body's doing the healing. You are doing the healing. Beautiful. And I'm like, but if you are only relying on me, if you're coming in here and I need you to fix me, I haven't done my job. Yeah. I haven't explained what I do well enough to you. I haven't made you see that you are actually your own medicine and that this is, you're doing this. I'm just doing this with you. I'm just reminding you, but this is already within you. And so I think our culture is very bred into not taking responsibility. Yes. And then so people don't want to do it. And like, look, I get it. The work is freaking hard sometimes. And, I would like, mine has not been a cup of tea. There's been days where I'm like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. I don't want to wake up and have to work for this. I don't want to clear anything else. Like I'm tired, but it's a choice and everybody has that free will to choose if that's something they really want to do or not. And either way, no judgment. I'm here for those that want to, and those that don't want to, I hold space and love for them as much as I can.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. That's really beautiful. Yeah. That it is, I feel like our society has just become such a lack of response, just push everything outwards, right? It's everything belongs to somebody else.
Yeah. It's a victim. When you're a victim, you have no power. You can't change anything. So if you continue to tell your story, I remember telling a friend of mine, you should do this therapy with this person. And they said, well, if I'm going to do therapy with them, I need a session before I do. It was a couple. And they're like, well, I need to do a session by myself with this therapist before the couples therapy. And I was like, why? And he's like, well, that person needs to know why I am the way I am. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there you go. You want this person to look at you through a specific lens because you want your story to represent you so that you can justify your behavior in the relationship. Yeah. And when you're in that place, there's what's going to change. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in all fairness though, like I've been there too. There was a point in my life where I was like, oh, I can just get away with what I'm doing because of what's happened to me. And because I didn't care and I was tired and I was very in pain and hurt. And so it's like, I also, I understand that. I understand that side. I mean, obviously I have not chosen that side anymore, but I do understand people being there and attaching to that, you know? So it's like having compassion for that and also acknowledging that somebody can come out of that space. Yes. So,
holding space for that.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes time.
Yeah. And there's levels to it. There's levels to it. It could be something even small that we do. A story around why I drive fast. It could just be something that small. Now, that's not going to have as big of an impact as why I can't be in a relationship or why I can't love someone or why can't I be vulnerable ever again. Mm-hmm. There's levels to it. But we're all working on, if we're on the path, we are working on dropping those stories, dropping that past, dropping that identity with it, because it doesn't serve us. We, listening to one of your mentors, Donnie Epstein, talks about pain is anything that stops you from being in the present. So it's like your story, I'm reviewing the story that you have about this or whatever. It stops you from being present. I can't be in the moment with you because I'm thinking about, I can't be in a relationship where I have to blah, blah, blah. Now I'm in pain, right? Because I'm taking away from the golden present moment.
Yeah. Which is the key. I feel like that when you're doing what you do, you're just bringing full awareness to the presence, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a energy presence, a physical presence, a thought present kind of a situation where everything gets aligned. And when you're in that space, you're in possibility. And that's where everything kind of frees up, I feel like.
Exactly. And sometimes, usually the first few sessions with people, especially when we're unraveling things, sometimes coming into the present means they have to feel everything that they've suppressed.
Yes.
And that can be very intense. And so, part of explaining what I do is I'm not here to make you feel better.
Right.
You're here to feel. And so stuff's going to come up. And as that comes up and clears, which these emotions are not you, they're not your identity. They don't need to be attached to you. You don't need to let your mind grip onto them and run down the rabbit hole. I'm like, they're going to come up, and then let them come up, let them come through. And as soon as they do, guess what? You have that much more space for potential to just come through you. And that switch over where the client sees like they've started to really let that go, and then the potential's like coming through, and they're like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah, see, it's like, it's really not that bad.
Yeah.
We just, we get so attached to like, oh, if I feel this emotion, then it's this, then it's that, and then I have depression and blah, blah, blah. Like, and it just becomes, we just drag ourselves down.
Everything is a story. There's it's like story on top of story, on top of story, on top of story, on top of story.
It's called a layer cake.
Yeah, right. It's the, what do they call it? Mila, I forgot. It's an Italian cake. Mila something. And it's literally supposed to be 1,000 or 100 layer cake.
Oh gosh.
So let's go down the steps here. So we're overcoming our past and we're embracing your potential. I think we've covered the overcoming your past, but let's talk down the steps. My A analytical mind is going to be like,
I'm like,
Leonard
great.
list. Yeah.
She laughs right away, but it's okay. We're going to overcome our past. So we're going to.
Okay, great. We're going to do it right now.
Well, let's go to the listeners want to know how to overcome their past and embrace your potential. That's the main topic. So it's like, we want to release identity, right? With our story.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that step one, or that's like step two? At least
no, step two. Step one is awareness. We have a story. Yeah. Step one is awareness.
All right. So awareness.
Knowing that it's there.
You have to actually become aware of, this is what I'm waking up and telling myself every day.
Okay. So we were aware that we bring step one, bring awareness. I'm programming my mind in a way that doesn't behoove me.
Yes.
Step two
is to then recognize and become aware as much as possible when that story is coming up, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's you're telling it to the person. What I also love in Donnie's new book is that he says, when you ask somebody like, how are you? And they'll give you all their circumstances versus like, how are you? And then it's like, okay, but I didn't ask about your circumstances. Yeah. And are your circumstances dictating how you are? Right. And if so, then you're a victim to your circumstances. Yeah. And so then it's like, that's the awareness of like, what story am I telling?
Right.
I could have a flat tire, but I could be great. I just had a flat tire, but everything else is great, And so it's like, becoming aware enough to catch yourself throughout the day, because that's the only way you're going to rewrite that program. So step two is bringing the awareness throughout the day and actually catching yourself.
Okay. And you mentioned that book just so people can know. It's Donnie Epstein, and the book is called
The Seeker's Code.
The Seeker's Code. Seeker's Code by Donnie Epstein.
Yeah.
All right. So that's step two. Go ahead.
Real quick before we go on the list, I have to point this out because it's always interesting. In Farsi, when you say, how are you doing? You say, hale chetore. And hal literally means, what is your now? Everyone feels it. Have you ever put that together? Like your hal means like, how we say like hala? Yes. Hala means right now. Related. Yeah. So when you say hale chatur, it's almost like, what is your now? But people interpret it as, how are you feeling? Right. And it's not. It's, how is your presence?
I love
it's
that.
It's really powerful when you look at it, because it's
a language.
Yeah. It's but it's really cool when you break down some of these things and you're like, wow, this is so much more than how are you feeling? It's like, what's your presence?
Totally.
You know, and I feel like that's how you're interpreting that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So now we've brought awareness to it. We've woken up. We realized that there's a story. We've brought presence to that story. We realize we got to get out of it and drop it. What's our next step?
The next step is also to be in acceptance with it. Because the other thing I see so often is people shaming and blaming and punishing themselves for their story.
Beautiful. Yep.
And when they do that, they're reprogramming all those things back into their conscious.
Okay.
And they're also creating a new identity around I'm wrong. And when you're in that space of I'm wrong, it goes down another rabbit hole of I'm not capable. I can't do this. I can't do that. I need to be better. But if it's more of like, because I'm lacking and you don't want people to be in a space of lack. So it's like being in acceptance of like, oof, okay, that's the story I've been telling myself. And then you have to choose what's the new story I want to write.
So the new story I want to write is the embracing your potential. Is that the part that connects with that? Okay.
Yes.
And that's like, for example, you waking up in the morning and grabbing your journal and be like, I'm going to imagine my day or put it down right here, exactly how I want it to play out.
Yeah.
And then that is not done in a state of lack. It's done in a state of full abundance. So you can have anything you want. It's carte blanche. You're writing it carte blanche. You're not like, well, look, there's limitations here. Or tell me, how is it when you write it?
I don't do limitations, but I will say it can feel a little funny to people when they're first starting out, right? And you want to make it within, let me see how I can say this without going off on a whole tangent. So basically our nervous system has a range. And when I work with somebody on the table, I never take them out of range, right? Because we're expanding little by little. Something like if somebody goes and does ayahuasca or has a big experience, even in breath work sometimes, you know, and then you take them out of range, they come back, it's like they have like a manic, you know, they're like, oh, I don't even know how to handle all this, like, because this is all changing. They come back and they're overload, right? Yeah. So sustainable change is like in increments, right? And taking that range a little by little. So I mean, even if you're just writing something just new of like, at least I've, you know, felt good about this today, or like, even if it's just stating gratitude, which you don't bring gratitude to your day, maybe naturally, it's like just shifting that little bit will help. And Joe always talks about, you know, thoughts are of the mind, feelings are of the body, the two different languages. And so it's like the other part of this is you can't just like think thoughts. You have to actually feel like, what does this feel like to be in this space? You know, one of my mentors, Dr. Tamara McIntyre, and her wife, Dr. Monique Andrews, they are so beautifully like poised in everything they talk about with this. And what I would love that they would say was, who are you without your pain? Like, ask your client, who are they without their pain? Because most people, they're so attached to their pain story, whether that's their
without your pain.
Yeah. Whether that's their pain body or their emotional pain body. And it's like, they've never even thought about, oh, what does my life look like without the pain?
Right.
What would that feel like? You know? And so it's like, go into that space. That potential is there for you, but they actually have to be, you know, the other thing is people have to believe they can heal. If they don't believe they can heal, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah. Now that pain, who are you without your pain is almost the same as who are you without the story? Because that pain is totally correlated to the story they're carrying around.
Correct.
Yeah. And they're not rewiring their brain by looking at everything through the lens of their story. So, okay.
Yeah. So I would say, you know, you get up and you choose what's the new story I want to have. And now look, when people are in physical pain, that's very difficult. You know, when they have disease, it's harder, but it's like, you can look at the other ways that life has come through you and try to attach to something else. And you look, I believe that a lot of the physicality of pain, chronic pain, disease, everything we're seeing these days is also very emotional and traumatic. If you look at Dr. Gabor Mate, like all of his stuff is on that, how this is showing up ancestrally, you know, through our genetics, through our DNA, epigenetics. And it's like, it's undeniable that there's a correlation with trauma and pain in the body and disease in the body.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't deny that this person is having this. And if you start to change your physiological state, you are going to start to change the cells in your body and they will begin to heal.
Correct.
So you have to just choose that, like, I'm so tired of suffering that I want to just believe in something different, even if it sounds like it's totally out there for you. What are you going to lose?
Right. And I think the way that if you shift your perspective into this is not a challenge, but an opportunity, it really shifts, right? Like you can go back and go, man, I have the ability to literally shift the epigenetics of humanity. Like I can hold that space. When I can heal this, I create a pathway for this to be changed.
Correct.
Not for myself, because unequivocally the universe is interconnected.
Right.
So as you're doing it, you're literally shifting that. And if you do that, you feel like, wow, what an opportunity. Like it completely shifts it, like it completely changes that whole dynamic of, man, I get to flex. I get to really flex my creator power
Totally
into something completely different. And I always encourage that, because I go, if you're looking at it as, oh my God, I have to go up this mountain, you're going to be saying it the whole way, even if you get to it, right? But if you're like, man, this is going to be great. Like if you view it as I'm coming down the mountain as opposed to it shifts your whole energy around it, because you're like, yeah, I'm already, it's going.
And
like
it's the same
it doesn't
mountain.
matter.
It's the same mountain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly
Sure.
the same. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to drop something in for Amir real quick here.
Yeah.
Speaking about dreams and then epigenetic and generational healing. It's like, so my mom and I are obviously very connected, right? Because she's like who trained me, and we have a very telepathic connection, which, is great and not sometimes. Sorry, Mom, love you. And the other day she called me on her way to work and she was like, did you have a dream last night? And I was like, yes. And she was like, me too. Tell me your dream.
Yeah.
And it was already, she had a dream. Both of our dreams were connected. And she started crying because she could feel the healing happening from what I'm going through all the way through her. And was like, I saw it in the dream and like da 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 da. And so when you talk about shifting on a cellular level, well, first of all, your cells come all the way from your grandmother, because your cells are already in that space in the eggs. So, she was like feeling it shift all the way through. And it was like to wake up and to hear her say that, to have her crying and being like, I could feel it clearing through me. And when I had it clearing through me, I could feel energetically it coming from behind me. So I was like, it's not just like something that just happened. I can feel this extending beyond me. And then she called me and was like, I had a dream too. Tell me the dream. So it's like, it's again, to say remembering dreams and just the way that this all links together is so much bigger than we can even imagine. And if you can allow yourself to go into that possibility of space, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I'm a huge believer of that, because everything is internal, regardless. It just doesn't matter. So as you're doing that, the entire world is healing too. And
exactly.
It can be daunting if you want to look at it that way, which is fine. There's no judgment.
Right.
It can feel like, oh my God, I have the weight of the world. Or you can be like, yeah, if I move, the world's moving. So let's start moving. Yeah. It
sure.
gets very exciting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That is. All right. Give us one of the biggest challenges you faced in your life and how you overcame it and what you learned from it. And you can choose how you want and what you want to. If you want to make it more general, if you don't want to share, it's okay.
Oh,
you can
I don't care about sharing.
You can just make it a general one if you want, however you feel comfortable. But it's to show us how you distilled love and light from it, how you grew from it, and how you used it as actually a part of your power now, let's say, and not as a part of your story that maybe some other people are struggling with that story. I have that story that I'm carrying around because I had this happen, and they haven't got to that point yet where they're like, it's one of the best things that happened to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, first of all, I'm very transparent about my story. And so out of full transparency, it's like I've been molested. I've tried to commit suicide. I've been in abusive relationships. I have been beaten to the point where I was in the hospital. And had also, I was also a victim of child pornography from my coach who basically raised me. And with all that aside, it all did come to a very head point where I hadn't addressed a lot of it. I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, I was very against therapy in college. I started having heavy depression when we moved to Seattle. Was already like self-harming about like probably 6 months after we moved there. And, I was pushing through because I was a competitive gymnast my whole life. So all I ever know is pushing through. And, after chiropractic school, it very much came to a head, and I was in a very toxic and abusive relationship. And, I wanted out, and I wanted out of life. And I very much was like, I'm giving up and I'm done. And it took me all the way down to the depths of despair. And coming back up from that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, and one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life. I was shown so much love and support, and I feel so grateful for how that unfolded, because most of the people that ended up showing up in my life to support me through that were strangers who, I would have never known how I was going to get through that time. But one miracle by another, I just kept having people show up for me. And so for me, that was definitely the hardest and lowest I've ever been in my life. I, was not the best person I've ever been. I had a lot of PTSD. I had a lot of stuff, if you want to name it that I had to get through. And there was points where, we're talking about the victim mindset and all of that, where I was tired, and I was like, I don't want to do this. Right. This is so much work. Like, we have so much to clear. Like, we have so much to heal. Like, how long is this going to take? Which is the joke, because it's forever. But then, as I stopped almost, what I think people end up doing, and I can do this as well, is we get so obsessed with looking in the trash of like all the stuff, and we're just like constantly looking down and digging through the trash of everything we have to heal and fix and blah, 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 that it's like I was missing the tiny opportunities in between where all the beautiful things were coming in from all the spaces where I was healing. And the more I brought my head up while still doing the work, it's like I can look back and be like, okay, that's a scar. But I don't have to sit in the scar and analyze the scar and then be like, how far have we gotten in the scar? Because every time I looked forward and I saw, some of my closest friends who came into my life, who are still in my life, who don't even understand what I do, but are like so there for me and show up 500%.
Right.
Like, those are some of the most beautiful experiences I've had ever being held. They taught me how to love again. They taught me how to open my heart again. They taught me how to receive and trust again. And they've still held me all the way through. And so I think, there was also pain in that. There was also things I messed up in that, obviously, as I'm navigating like these wounds and these things. But coming through that, to me, it's like now when somebody sits on my table and they've had something like that happen, I can sit there in all honesty and be like, okay, well, I'm here right now. I'm building something right now. I'm here with you right now. You can change this. No. I promise you can if you want it.
That's so beautiful.
Also being honest with them about, because people are like, it's going to be hard. And I'm like, yeah, some days it fucking sucks, but it's, do you want that or not? And if not, that's okay too. You know,
there's no judgment in it.
Yeah. No. And I get it. I can sit there with them when they're crying and they're like, I'm tired. And I'm like, I understand.
Yeah.
It can be exhausting some days to show up, but I'm really proud of you for still choosing to show up.
Awesome.
Because I know that's hard.
And that's like, it's such a perfect fit, right? Because you'll get it. I know you won't get offended by but you've selected such a path that has so much that led you down there, because now you're able to hold space for such a wider variety of things, right? Like you felt that array, you've experienced it. Yeah. And therefore now you can hold, your breadth of ability has just become a lot larger because you've done that.
Yeah. Like there's a quote that I posted today that was something like, your ability to hold pain is also your ability to like alchemize love.
Beautiful.
And use love to alchemize. And, what's interesting is people get on my table, they're very afraid to open up. Maybe they've never felt held in their entire life in a space where they can feel like they can really express and let out. And especially in the body ceremonies, because they're very intense and people are screaming and crying and having stuff come up from a very long time ago. And it's like to be able to be the foundation and the rock in that space for somebody where I'm like, I see you and I've got you. Like, just let it go.
Right.
Like, nobody's going to freak out. Nobody's going to judge you, like just be with it. Give yourself permission to just be with that.
That's beautiful.
It's so nice. And thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this in your story and how inspirational it can be to others. And, I agree with Amir completely. The catalyst that you chose in this life have allowed you to be who you are today and to help and serve as a result of it. You've seen so many sides of the coin, or whatever you want to call it, the prism, so that when you sit down with somebody, it's not counterfeit.
Yeah.
It's, I'm there with you. I face challenges most likely harder than you even. And look what I could do and look what you could do. And it's such an inspiration, because there's people who are afraid, there's people who are afraid who have gone through a lot, and you've gone through a lot, as you've mentioned, and your story is a really beautiful one. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and being candid about it.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing too is people are scared to feel the pain, especially when they've suppressed it for so long. It hurts coming up, and to be in a space where someone else is going to sit with you through that, it's just a lot easier than having to do it alone.
This is the guru experience, right? When you go, why do they you'll hear the stories about Ram Dass and all these folks, they go in front of their guru and they can't help but cry and open up, and they love them so much. It's because the guru has unconditional acceptance for them.
Yeah.
It's love and acceptance. It's the same thing where you read near-death experiences, the Howard Storm near-death experiences. That's a great one to check out. They say that when they get close to in that guy's case, it was who we saw was Jesus. They say you pick the imagery you want that's going to make you feel most comfortable when you go and make that transition. And he said, all I just felt was an immense amount of acceptance and love, and it's like, you're embodying that in your practice so people can feel comfortable that they're not feeling judged. See, they're afraid that if, I'm not speaking on everyone's behalf, but I feel that they're afraid that if they open up and open that wound, they'll be looked upon poorly. Oh, you had that circumstance happen to you, you're less than, or I'm going to be judged because I didn't have this perfect fairy tale life that I see everywhere on TV that I'm supposed to have, and it's like, you're like, I hold complete space for you. And you know what? I've been through things like this and I'm here for you completely. And it's like, just that alone, if you're not doing any chiropractic work, any energetic work, just that practice alone can heal.
Yeah, definitely.
Holding space is one of the most important things that we can do, regardless. I feel like in a daily just beingness, holding space is just gigantically important.
Yeah.
And it's a space that is just judgment free, right? It's like, great, and I think when you do that in a very loving way, it also lets the other person let it go, because you don't need to, sorry, I'm not trying to speak on your behalf. This is like my experience, but you don't need to, like, if someone's gone through pain, you don't need to cry with them per se, right? Because if you can hold that space cleanly, they can also be like, maybe this isn't as big of a deal as, you know what I mean? Because it could be something that's, and I'm not trying to make it less, but it allows them to be like, oh, I could also move through this more quickly than I anticipated.
Yeah, very
it's
much
like,
so. Again, back to the story. It's like, you create the story of how big it could be in your mind. And sometimes it is big, but sometimes it's actually, you just have so much fear of actually looking at it, and then you turn and you look at it and you're like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, it was a little painful, but I got through it, you're like, oh, it's not that bad actually. Okay, I can do that.
That's what the acceptance.
Yeah.
So that's really big. The acceptance allows you to start this process and cap it. It's like, I've accepted that this is part of my gig, whether I chose it, you did choose it in some form. Whenever you want to take that responsibility, you can. You can say I'm a victim, whatever, but at some point you're going to have acceptance that you're part in the story. And when that happens, that allows for the next step to really take place. And it's like, when we don't have acceptance of it, we play the victim role. So it's like a huge part of what you said is the acceptance. It's a paramount. I mean, all pieces are important, but you can't get past it without full acceptance.
It's funny. I'll share another little Farsi bit because it's really interesting. Yeah. The, just passing Halloween a few days ago, right? It's the ghouls and goblins, right? So this whole idea of a goblin and ghouls are like these scary big things. The word ghoul comes from a Farsi word called ghoul. And ghoul literally is a giant, right? But it's a illusion.
Yeah.
Because ghouls they're not really there.
Yeah.
And so when I relate that back to it is you can make this little thing, this monster, this giant that's there. But when you approach it, it like all of a sudden vanishes. And you're like, man, I made a mountain out of a molehill for no reason. And I've held that story. And it's like, for what? It was just an illusion.
Facing your fear directly allows the fear to dissipate. When I was in sales, I remember I had a thing I used to carry around. It says action cures fear. Because you'd be like, I'm afraid to do that. I'm afraid to make that call. I'm afraid to do this or that. I would just pick up the card. Action cures fear.
Yeah.
Just step into it and it dissolves it.
Dissolves it right away.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
And I think people too are just so ashamed to like bring up their stuff. You know, they're so afraid to like be seen in that space. And, you know, people see what I do and then I have a lot of clients think like, I don't know, like I've never made a mistake or something, or that I'm like, there's like this perfect thing. And I'm like, they'll say like they did something that, you know, would be seen as bad. Right. And I'm like, I've done that. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I made plenty of mistakes.
Yeah.
Like I did a lot of great not stuff, you know, like I had pain. I'm human. So it's like, just for them to be like, oh, okay. Like, and she doesn't hate herself anymore.
Yeah.
And being able in that acceptance too, it's not just acceptance of the good things.
No.
It's full acceptance.
Yeah.
And so, turning and being able to be seen in all that. Yeah. One is takes a lot of courage, but two, it's like the facing of that. It just transmutes so much of that instantly.
Beautiful.
Instantly.
Beautiful.
All right. A couple quick questions to rattle off. If you had to recommend one book or one talk that changed your life, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one.
So this is so hard for me. Look, I love The Alchemist. I've read that book so many times because again, it's like the hero's journey, but then he just comes back home to himself, right? Like you're just coming home to yourself.
Beautiful.
But the other book that I not recently, but like within the last few years read that really helped me with letting go of, you know, it's kind of what you were talking about, like the catalyst of like, oh, I was going to be a dancer and then chiropractic was Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment.
Oh yeah, great book.
Everybody reads Untethered Soul, but I preferred Surrender Experiment because
I told you about that book. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, it's really like the practice of life. You know, life is the practice. It's not just when you show up on the mat. It's not just when you do the breath work. It's not just when you do the meditation. It's like how, again, you affect, right? The effect is like, are you being affected or are you going to go out there and be the creator? And you get to choose in every single moment how you respond to everything. Yeah. And so that book really allowed me to shift, you know, life happening to you versus through you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great book. It's a story, basically Michael Singer's life story. And he did a surrender experiment. He chose at a certain age, he said, I'm going to surrender to whatever life brings forward for me. And you just read the whole book. It's just his whole life story. And some of it gets real hairy. Wow. It gets real hairy, but when it all, you know, comes to be at the end and you're just like, wow. Yeah. It's really a great book. Both his books are great. I mean, I love both of them, but thank you. That's a great book. Yeah. Okay. If you had to distill one profound message, just one profound message to the world, what would it be?
You are your own medicine. You're the ending and the beginning and not the other way around.
Beautiful.
You got to choose what you want to end and then you got to step into how it begins because death isn't even the end.
Mic drop. Just drop the mic. Throw it down.
Beautiful.
That was good.
It literally, it is like.
Don't really though.
It's the full cycle, right? Because we're in such a dualistic binary thought process, right? That again comes down with a lot of the stuff you were also saying, right? It's like when people look at you as somebody who they look up to, you become perfect.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's the brain that's speaking, right? Because the brain wants to go, it's this or this. There's no, it's this or this, you know? But it's not. And in the same effect, I feel like that's very linked to what you're talking about because when something is ending, innately something is beginning.
Of course.
Now, Yeah, it's just really beautifully. So I don't want to like take away from it, but it's really important because I think a lot of what we do is clearing, and then we don't step in the creator role.
Right.
We just complete, and then you're in the space, and things again kind of happen to you.
And you got to clear that again.
Right.
And you okay, I'll let it
That's a
happen to
pattern.
me. I keep clearing,
Yeah, that's a pattern in and of itself that people who, in a way, I don't want to like discourage people from therapy by any means, but they also get addicted to therapy. They just keep clearing space, and then they subconsciously create. And it's like, no. You want to also step into your role of
Correct.
like, what am I birthing?
This is actually really good to bring up because also, people release a bunch of stuff and then they're like, oh, I released so much. And then I'm like, okay, great. Now you got to fill it. What are you going to fill it with?
Yeah, because if
You know
you
what I
don't,
mean?
it will get filled.
Right, exactly. And most likely by the old SAVE programs, patterns, people, places, and things, because that's what you know and that's what's familiar and that's what you'll go back to.
Yeah.
So, and I think also on the note of duality, it's interesting because one, I'm not a black and white thinker. It's just not how I've ever been. And so I think life is lived in the nuance,
Yes.
and all the tiny things in between. And that's where you actually find the most variety and the most depth is in the nuance.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing.
That was awesome.
All right. Well, that was our main topic. My cup is full.
Very, very cool.
Spilleth over.
If everyone's looking to stay in contact with you, website,
So
Socials.
tell us your IG, Dr. Danielle.Divine.
Danielle.
It's like 2 a.m.
Wow.
Okay. Sorry.
And you just got worked on
reading
too.
it.
Yeah.
You guys are still out
My cue
in
card.
Pluto.
It was the cue
Yeah.
card. It was the cue card. Okay. Let me just
I'll
say the socials, please.
I'll excuse it because you
Yeah.
guys are still out in cloud at the 7,000 or whatever
I'll
one.
remember
I'll,
next because of this.
like I'll allow it.
Yeah.
You hold space for that.
No, not that. We're back here now. Socials. Instagram is at drdanielle.divine. My TikTok is the same, which I just started doing, but you know what? People are really liking them because versus Instagram where it's like 90 seconds, which for me, I'm like, how am I supposed to say anything in 90 seconds?
Right.
I really get into depth with practices on there. So that's a really great way to go if like you just want practices. I give practices all the time on there for people. And then my website is www.drdanielledivine.com. And on there you can find all my retreats, one-on-one sessions, online stuff, the workshops, all the things. So
And you
beautiful.
you have a one-on-one retreat out in the desert you're doing. Is that right? Can you tell us
in
a little
Joshua
about that?
Tree.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It sounds
Yeah.
really neat. Yeah. Listen to this.
This is called Chrysalis. And this is like the stage before the butterfly, right? So you're being held at a 3-day experience. 1 day is the body ceremony, so the big 90-minute session. The next day is a breathwork session, and the day after that is psilocybin session.
And it's one-on-one.
One-on-one, you have me for basically 4 days. It's a Thursday night to a Monday morning.
Wow.
And we start the morning with a morning practice. We do basically everything that I do. And we also go into like, what are your subconscious patterns? What are these patterns? And what is the story you're telling yourself so that we can begin to shift and rewrite it. And then after the 3-day experience, 4-day experience, I also follow it up with integration calls because to me, again, it's not just about the experience. I need to hold you all the way through so that you actually are beginning to create these shifts. So that's what that is.
That sounds
Wow.
incredible.
That's awesome.
Guys, if you want to do that, connect with her. She's only got a few spots for that. As you can imagine, it's 3-4 days of her life, one-on-one. It's a lot to take on.
It is a
She
lot.
doesn't pick everybody. I assume you're
No,
she's
there is an
choosy.
application process.
She's choosy, but it's worth it. And if you guys want to check out her website, drop her a line. She may have a link somewhere for that. You can just make a comment below.
Yeah.
And subscribe while you're here. Subscribe to our channel.
Yeah.
If you
yeah.
if you
We
haven't
bring
subscribed
amazing
before.
people like Dr.
Look at this,
Danielle.
huh?
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at the value we're bringing
Yes.
here, you know? Okay,
That's
so
fantastic.
thank you.
You're welcome.
You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah.
all
Thank you
ours.
for being here.
We're going to go to What's Brewing. This is where we take a look into the global state of consciousness.
Yeah. Go.
Amir has something for us.
Just a few. They're 2 of them are related, so they'll be really quick. The other one that I've been like preaching forever And it's actually coming to fruition now. 23andMe, which I was like, this is like a CIA operation.
I thought the same thing. That's why I haven't done it.
So now they are out and out selling data to pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, wow. What
So
Shocking.
your all of your genetic history and everything.
It said it's going to be anonymous.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
You know, these folks are trustworthy, so don't worry about it.
I always think of, and I actually just showed my family. Do you guys know The Onion? Like the fake news?
Yeah.
So they had one like 12 years ago, and they were.
For other people who don't know, The Onion is a website that does all satire news.
Yeah,
It's
satire.
not true. It's all satire, and they're really funny, but some of them come true.
Yeah. And so they were talking about at that point, they were like, it was this congressional hearing where they were. They were interviewing the supposed head of the CIA. And he's like, we used to spend all this money to try to spy on people. And now we just created Facebook and they give us everything. Like we know where they are. We know what they're thinking. We know what they like to eat.
Oh,
But anyways, that's one. The other two, I just want to mention this week, this is actually really big. The digital yuan was used for the first time in an oil transaction. That is gigantically big. Because the petrodollar, which is, if you don't know what that is essentially what is keeping the dollar alive. Mm-hmm. Because oil has been transacted within as the dollar. That's the only means that oil is transacted. And now not only is the yuan getting traded, but it's digital, which, by the way, coincides really nicely to starting wars or trying to start wars, because that will activate the dollars becoming important again and being able to provide pressure. So that happened this week. So it's an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on, which brings me to a really beautiful quote from Thomas Jefferson.
Look at you bossing up the What's Brewing section.
Yeah. 1802.
That adjustment.
Yeah.
You're flowing so nicely.
Back in time. Yeah.
Flowing.
Thomas Jefferson said this, and it's a really profound quote, but I thought it really connects with that. And he says, "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." It's just an amazing quote, right? And you talk about it, you look at it.
1802.
Yeah. These guys knew what was up, right?
Yeah,
like they knew what was up. The only thing that I don't give them credit for, in a way, and I'm very, very clear on this, is that you cannot escape to a new place. You have to deal with the issue right where it was.
Yeah.
So they're, and I don't want to call it a mistake, but the pattern that they repeated was, let's leave the country we're in to go to a new place to start anew. And I am very clear and vocal on this, that our job is to complete the earth right here. There's nowhere else for us to go. Yeah. There's no space time. There's no other planet we need to go. Whatever it is, we are gonna get it done here.
Very nice. Thank you. Just glowing and flowing with that. All right, so let's head to Spill the Beans.
Spill the beans.
This is where we go over our weekly spiritual task. We hold each other accountable.
Yes.
Amir usually hits me in the back of the head with a pot.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
Before the cameras come on.
Yes. We cut that out. We edit that out. It's how he holds me accountable. That's how I actually do the work.
I'm all love,
Stubborn.
man. I'm all love.
So he holds the
Stubborn.
space. He holds the space.
I actually approve of that. I'm just kidding.
Jeez, guys. And we have a really special one that Dr. Danielle has designed. But before we get there, we're going to talk about our last week's one, which Amir can take over because that was his episode.
Yeah. So last week we talked about the elements.
Okay.
And we talked about fire to air to water to earth. And very importantly, from earth back into fire. And seeing that each one of these elements is not just a physical representation. Not only is it a symbolic representation of an energy, but that each one of them actually is a consciousness. And what was really key in this cycle, and I'll do it for the camera this way because I always go fire to air to water to earth, is that these also create a cross form. And it is in the middle of that cross is that harmonic point of creation and awareness and consciousness. And I also refer to it as Christ consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And we went through this last week, but that has become anthropomorphized and it's become a human, and the cross has gone long this way instead of it being equally balanced. But you look at the old ones and it is that balance. So the task that we had this week was to see if you can stay in that central point of consciousness, and to see if you are at that point the creator that is holding balance for all of these consciousnesses of the passion, of the spark, of the infinite possibility of the air, of the fluidity that comes down into manifestation, and never being attached to the manifestation and going right back into the passion again.
It's light work.
Yeah.
No big
super
deal.
light.
Yeah, easy. Do it every day.
It's like Windexing your mirror. It's a couple seconds. No big deal. Did you do it, Leonard? Huh? Did you do all 20 things I told you to do?
hold them perfectly.
Yes. And don't forget, at the end, you need to come back around. Dude, did you do that as well? Oh, yeah. All day. That's all I did. All week, Amir. You got me.
So you didn't do it.
So Leonard's answer is no, I did not.
Yeah, I was like, so that's a no.
Look, I did some of them okay.
Did you remember?
Look, I remembered them, and I had some fun stuff this week, and with the help of some close friends, I was able to provide and do some of the things that you said in that, and be the creator and hold space for it, and be in that position of balancing those things, and sometimes a little bit more on one side or the other, but it's a work in progress to do all of it.
Yeah,
it's possible for sure.
Yeah,
and I see that.
Nice. I had a couple different moments that I really kind of just stepped into that space. And if you remember, I also said, if there's an element, a physical element that resonates with you, let that be a reminder for you to kind of spark. And wind is mine. And this week was really windy, if you noticed.
Yes, I
remember?
noticed.
So I always I'm like, the universe is always trying to speak to me. And so the wind was a constant reminder for me of breath, am I in possibility? Let me balance, let me coordinate, and let me kind of create from there. And it was really profound. I had a couple really interesting experiences. For me, it's always interesting because the work aspect of it, I feel like work, physical, work that we do can lead you off the path a little bit more quickly than other things.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so for me, stepping into that space, just pulling back, and I had a deal that I didn't think was even going to be a possibility, all of a sudden become a really big possibility. And it was for me, and I thank air, the wind, for it, because it was just that moment to come back into that center point and go, whoa, I've tipped the scales. Am I in the middle? Am I just experiencing this as a neutral observer, or am I going somewhere else? So it was really cool, but maybe it was a bigger task, but hey, it's fun, right? You got to play big.
Yeah. And I'll work on practicing that this week. So now let's go to Dr. Danielle Divine.
For the practice this week.
Spill the beans.
Let's go overcoming the past, right? So this week we're going to do an inner child practice.
Nice.
And you know what? We're going to do it right now, live,
wow.
real time,
Okay.
so that they can do it and that you guys can be a
Haven't we done
living
enough today?
example.
That's amazing. Oh,
It was very easy. We'll do it very light.
All right.
Okay. Because you guys went deep already. So go ahead and close your eyes, plant your feet on the ground, spine's nice and straight. And everybody else can follow along too. So you're taking a deep breath from your tailbone to the crown of your head. Exhale, let that go. And as we get into overcoming our past, there's all these stories we have attached to our past, or programming, or things we were told we could do, we couldn't do, how we were treated. And so I want you to begin by breathing into the heart. And as you breathe into the heart, I want you to just think about yourself at a younger age, whatever age shows up first is perfect, and visualize yourself at that age. And maybe at that age you were told you could do certain things or you couldn't do certain things, or maybe there was a lot of chaos around you, or you were programmed to believe certain things. And as you visualize this part of yourself, I want you to visualize what you would look back and tell this part of yourself now in the most loving, compassionate, and caring way that would allow this part of yourself, this younger version of yourself, to step into their potential. If you could speak life into them, what would you say? And you're going to wake up and do this every single morning, speaking life into that younger version of yourself that maybe is scared of rejection or of speaking up for themselves, or is thinking that they need to behave or act a certain way or continue to put out fires around them. What would you tell them in order for them to feel safe and to be fully embodied in their expression? And allow it to bring up whatever emotions, sensations, anything it is. And then you're just going to hold that part of yourself, reparent that part of yourself throughout your week. And notice how it shows up for you throughout different engagements, conversations, when you're in different places. And just continue to hold that part of yourself through all those experiences. And as simple as that.
Wow. That's going to be a fun one.
Thank you. Well, we did it already, so now we don't have to be held accountable.
No.
Every
morning.
You have to do it every morning. That's the work.
I immediately went, because when you first said it, I think both of us, because I felt you felt it too, in your morning routine of having that photo.
Yeah,
I think I want to do
one.
that. That's really cool.
It's a big one.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
I did a quantum hypnosis healing therapy that I was on the table for like 7 hours, and part of it was he identified a scene when I was younger that I was struggling, and he was like, "Look at yourself. Where do you see?" And I said, "Well, I see myself on the patio, and I'm outside, and there's arguing in the background, and I went outside, and I'm frustrated." And he was like, "Okay, well, what would you say to yourself?" And I said this, and he's like, "All right, go say it." Because I'm in the thing, so I'm seeing it.
Right.
So I stepped out of the bushes into the patio and I held myself and hugged myself for a while. And I said, it's all going to be fine.
Yeah.
Everything is going to be okay.
Yeah.
Don't hold on to this. Let it go. It's all going to work out just fine. And it was like such a relief, and I felt the same kind of thing that we were doing in this practice. It was like I was going and telling myself that it's okay. Everything is going to work out fine. Don't stress about it. It's safe. Yeah. Whatever will be. Like, take it easy and have fun. It's something for me because it's always the mind is trying to work things out. I want to work this out. And it's like, let it go and just let it be.
Yeah.
So it's like everyone has their own thing, but it's like going in and doing these visualizations, they carry so much power.
They do.
So much power. Yeah. And that one has really big effects. Especially, I have a lot of people do something, it's not the same for every person, but we definitely do some of that. And some of it's not even younger. It's just like even some of it's people looking at where they're at right now and being able to see themselves through the eyes of Source. And
wow,
it's really powerful.
Really and then I took that lesson, right, which is the lesson I was telling my 7-year-old self, and I was applying it till now. Yeah. I was like, if I'm looking from an older self and I'm saying it to my 7-year-old self, well, maybe I could tell it when I'm 50, I'll tell it to my 40-year-old self.
Right.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. It's the same story.
Right.
It applies differently. It applies the same, actually. It applies to different circumstances, but it's the same message. Yeah. So for me, it was like taking that teaching and then just bringing it into today too.
Yeah.
And ultimately that is where you're doing it, right? Yeah. There's nowhere else you're doing it. You are doing it right now.
Right. And so many of us, when you're talking about overcoming the past and embracing for your full potential, it's like so many of us are letting our inner child run the show. And it's like they can be there and you can hold them while you're doing the show. Right. But they don't get to run the show. When they run the show, that's when the chaos happens. That's when you keep acting from those old patterns and those old ways, the old beliefs, the programming, the limitations. So you look at that part of yourself and you're like, what is it that you need? What is it that you're asking for? What is it that you need to hear from me? How do I need to hold you through this? And then it's like, okay, well, I'm the driver. So this is how we're going to drive now. But I see you and I hear you and I want to validate what you felt. And like, this is how we're going to do it now.
Wow. Beautiful. I can't wait for this spill the beans. It's very, very exciting. But yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it.
Yeah.
Very great episode.
Yes.
Check out Dr. Danielle Divine on Instagram, TikTok, or website. I'll put the links below. Sign up for her events. There's 2 events coming up, 11/11 and 12/9, both inexpensive, super lots of value there. She also does one-on-ones at her studio on La Brea on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, every other Friday. She does personal one-on-one sessions. Amir and I both had a session. She said it was just a floss compared to a cleaning, and it was incredible. We highly, highly recommend it.
Yes.
Like, subscribe, and share. We appreciate you. Thank you for riding with us. I hope your cup is full.
Thank you.
Good night.